Hey, welcome to the Razzle Dazzle Show, a podcast where we make connections through the lens of video games and all things pop culture. I'm your host, Jared, and our guest today is Kira Buckland. Kira was born and raised in Anchorage, Alaska, and discovered her passion for performance in middle school, initially aspiring to be a rock singer. In high school, her love for anime and video games led her to explore voice acting, where she became a prominent figure in the early online voice acting scene, even founding the Voice Acting Club, now a global community with over 30,000 members. After moving to Los Angeles in 2011, Kira transitioned from indie projects to professional roles in anime and video games, achieving full-time success by 2018. In 2021, she fulfilled her dream of voicing Jolyne Cujoh in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Her credits include Nier Automata, Demon Slayer, Genshin Impact, Fire Emblem, and many more. Outside of acting, Kira is a proud DeLorean owner, cat mom to 5, and enjoys Pokemon Go, roller skating, and streaming as her cow VTuber persona, Josie McFly. Think about this episode somewhere on the internet, and be sure to follow us on our socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Links to them are down below. And with all that being said, it's Razzle
Dazzle time.
Hello, Kira. Thank you so much for being on the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I am doing fantastic. A quick Kickstarter question before we get into it. What would be your go-to weapon of choice? A baseball bat or spiked knuckles?
I want to say a baseball bat, partially because I play a lot of Honkai Star Rail, and I always choose the Galactic Baseballer option in the dialogue.
Yeah, I love that. That's a reference to you voicing Kyoko in River City Girls, and I'm not sure if you look through our show or whatever, but we've had the composer of those games, Megan McDuffie, on the show, and I asked her the exact same question, and I'm pretty sure she said the bat, but I could be wrong. So,
that's so fun.
Yeah, Megan is awesome. So I figured, this is a perfect opportunity to bring back that question. A kind of side thing again before we get into it. Have you heard of the song called JoJo Pose?
Oh, not a song, no. I mean, I've heard some of the JoJo mashups and the songs that people have created back in the day, but I haven't looked any up in a while. So if it's newer, I probably haven't.
It's pretty old at this point. It goes JoJo Pose, JoJo. I'm not a singer, but...
Oh, weirdly, I don't think I have.
Interesting. Okay. Well, if you, on your free time, if you want to look it up, that would be cool. But that song was made by Apollo Fresh, who has also been a guest on the show a while ago. I'm not trying to brag or anything. I just think JoJo related. You're clearly a big JoJo fan. I just thought you'd know the song. But anyways, yeah, okay. Let's start at the beginning. Can you tell us, where did you grow up and how would you describe the musical background of your childhood?
So I grew up in Anchorage, Alaska when I was younger, and I mean still to this day, I was really into rock music. Nowadays, and especially over the past decade and whatnot, I listen to a lot of classic rock, so 70s and 80s. I mean, I guess I listen to a variety of music, but I would say rock and roll is kind of my big thing.
David Bowie is clearly a big inspiration for you, or just a big idol in your life, no?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. He's my favorite artist.
I know from my research you were planning to be a rock star. Did you play any instruments growing up? Did you have any in the household?
I tried learning bass guitar when I was 16, and the best thing that I ever was able to do was play the intro to Longview by Green Day, and I was proud of that, but I never got very good at it. I think kind of one thing, because I mainly wanted to be a singer, but I wasn't very good at it, to be honest. I mean, even now it's I try to sing for fun, or maybe I'd like to for a project sometime, but it's just not really something that I'm talented at. The skill, if you can call it that I have now is just a result of lots and lots of practice. But one thing that I kind of realized was that I liked vocal performance, but when I was 12 or 13 and I was I want to be in a band someday or whatever, it's I didn't even think voice acting was a thing. I mean, obviously on some level that if you watch a cartoon, the characters aren't really talking like somebody does it, but it's just not really something that you think about for them. I mean, maybe kids now do. I have a lot of kids that come up to me at conventions and they're really excited because they like Demon Slayer and stuff, and I'm always I'm thinking in my head I hope I don't ruin the illusion for them by being a real person. But, I think especially in the age of YouTube and creators and stuff, people, they are more aware of the people behind the media that they like or whatever. So, but anyway, it wasn't till maybe I was 16 that I started getting into anime and then kind of realized like, oh yeah, there's people whose job is to do the voices for this stuff. Okay, well, what if I did that? Because like I always knew that it wasn't going to be super realistic to be a singer, like, you know, as my job or whatever. So finding that was kind of, I don't know, I guess it answered like a lot of the things that I wanted to do, because one of the issues too, where I was like, oh, I want to be in a band and all this kind of stuff, is that generally, I mean, unless, you know, you have somebody else who does it for you, you're expected to write your own music. And that's not something I was good at. I tried a lot of times over the years, but even just like writing songs, it always, you know, it was like kind of stupid or whatever. So it was like, that was something that I had a hard time with. Like I was always better at just like performing other people's songs. So it's like, well, in voice acting, you don't have to write your own stuff. You know, you get a script that other people give and you just say what's on the script. So, you know, at the same time, it's like if I took little like acting or improv classes or whatever, I was like, oh, like I kind of like, you know, acting and performing. And, you know, it just wasn't till a little bit later that I kind of put two and two together that it's like, oh, I can do this. Like, but again, the thing with acting was I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm good at like being on stage and like, doing like physical acting and all that kind of stuff. So it just sort of answered all those questions.
That completely makes sense to me on every level. Like, first of all, I also consider myself a musician with big air quotes, right? I played the sax, I played the ocarina, and I also am learning the bass. I'm a lefty, so it's very hard. I have to like flip everything whenever I see like tutorials or whatever, so it's like weird. Anyways.
Ooh, yeah.
And yeah, it's always been like a hobby thing, a recreational thing. I never really thought about like pursuing that, right? Like I've been to the high school band, but high school band kind of ruined music for me, and that's like a whole tangent right there. But to save you from that, in terms of the voice acting bit and, you know, finding that transition, I relate to that in a way of like, you know, when I was deciding what I want to be like as my career, right? Before I got into public media, radio and stuff like that, right? It was very hard for me to decide. But there was this channel called Nintendo Minute that was on the Nintendo YouTube channel, and it was hosted by Kid and Krista, right? And I'm like, oh, I like that. I want to be on that. So I guess on camera, maybe, I don't know. Mm-hmm. So I took like some general courses throughout college, like communications at first, and then when I transferred to the FGCU where I graduated, then I kind of like fine-tuned it to journalism, got a degree in whatever. But through that process, I learned just by like happen chance that I like audio production. Audio production has always been around in my life. You know, my stepdad's an audio engineer. He's worked with like Pitbull, Shakira, the Estefans and stuff,
awesome.
Right? So I've always been like in a sound booth, in a sound studio growing up, you know? And this is kind of like also how this show got started, because this show got started as a college podcast, and then like we left the college program and we're independent. But through this process of starting this show and then interning at the station I work at, you know, I fell in love with audio production in terms of voice only.
Yeah.
So I started like thinking, oh, I want to be like an on camera personality thing. But it evolved to like, no, I'm comfortable doing this. Yeah, I have a camera with you right now, but like I'm not gonna, there's no video editing involved in any moments of this show. For one, the comfortability of being on camera, that's like one thing. And two, it's like, that's a lot of editing and I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. So it's, yeah, I can relate to that on some level.
That was interesting too that you mentioned that, because, you know, I'm also someone who's not comfortable being on camera, but something that I thought was really cool is VTubing technology being a thing. I'm kind of on hiatus from Twitch right now because of the voice actor strike. It's a long story, but, you know, just kind of having that opportunity was like really... It's just kind of like a game changer to be like, okay, well, if I'm doing something where, you know, like streaming or whatever, where you kind of need some sort of visual besides like your game or whatever, it's like being able to have that like virtual avatar is just super cool.
Yeah, it is. And like, you know, one of the biggest VTubers out there, Amelie, right? She, you know, blew up thanks to that. And, you know, she's also a voice actress in like many big projects like, My Dress Up Darling and other stuff like that. So like it's a really cool solution to that. Like I don't think anybody says that like you have to have a webcam up for streaming things. Like there's plenty of Let's Players and I'm pretty sure other streamers who just don't have a camera, and that's fine.
Oh, totally. I mean, that's how I started streaming, was just kind of sharing my game screen. But I think that if you want something that sets you apart a little from all the, because I started with streaming Genshin Impact, which of course a million people were doing at the time. So it's sort of like, well, how can I, set myself apart from the million other Genshin streamers? And I think like a way that people kind of do choose who to watch is they're like, well, who do I want to hang out with, And so if the person is just a disembodied voice, it becomes a little harder maybe to connect with them. So then creating this whole lore, and I'm like, oh, I'm like a cow from outer space and all this kind of stuff, it's it definitely like just helped with community engagement, or cow community as we call it.
Oh, I love this. Okay. Just to move on a bit, but I love where this is, where we are at already. What kind of music was being played in the household? Not necessarily by you, or like, by your parents, by your family. Was it also classic rock?
No, I mean, I wish. Like, a lot of people that I know were like, oh, yeah, like my parents had me listen to classic rock growing up and stuff. And that just, wasn't really what I grew up with, sadly. So I had to discover it a bit later in life. I mean, I would say like my parents listened to more like oldies, so like, like 50s, 60s, that kind of stuff.
Like Motown, maybe?
No, like Beach Boys kind of stuff, which I do like. Yeah. But then I kind of discovered, like, let's see, when I was like 12 is when I kind of started listening to, like, my first favorite band was Smash Mouth. And then I got really, really super into No Doubt. They were one of my biggest inspirations as like a teenager, and I was basically like, yeah, I want to be in a band like that someday. And, didn't happen, obviously. But that's okay. And then I got also really into Green Day starting when I was like 16, and they became my favorite band for a while. And then, I've gone through like a lot of musical phases. I went through like a big EDM phase at one point, all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I would say like, now a big part of what I settled into as just my favorite is classic rock. Obviously David Bowie I mentioned. I also like bands like the Rolling Stone, Pink Floyd, Fleetwood Mac. Actually JoJo influenced a lot of my musical taste. Probably no surprise, but JoJo is how I discovered bands like King Crimson, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and even Yes. I actually don't think I really knew Yes's music before JoJo. So I know that's embarrassing, but, just like discovering bands like that was really cool. And then David Bowie, like being in David Bowie groups is how I discovered T-Rex and I want to say Iggy Pop, but I think I actually knew Iggy Pop because of JoJo first. So, but, even just like, learning about like other glam rock bands because I was in David Bowie groups and that kind of stuff is fun.
Right. Yeah. I think it's so cool. From Megan McDuffie's episode, just to bring her back up again, she loves David Bowie, and her favorite movie of all time is Labyrinth. So I think it's just really cool how like both of you kind of are like paralleling this right now. So I want to touch more about David in a second, but just to like kind of ramp up to that, do you remember the first physical music you've owned that was yours?
Honestly, it was probably like a Britney Spears record as a kid. Like, that's just kind of, I think a lot of like preteen girls or whatever growing up in the 90s, that was like the thing that everybody had.
Understood. And you said it was a CD, not a record.
Yeah, a CD.
Gotcha. Okay. Then I want to ask, how did you get exposed to David?
So I think, obviously I'd heard about him just from cultural, like collective cultural, like osmosis or whatever. But weirdly, I never really took the time to specifically check out his music. And I should have, because it's like, wow, what was I missing, all this time? And okay, this is also going to be really embarrassing, but I've told the story, like, because everyone knows, like, I'm like super attracted to David Bowie. Like, I mean, who isn't, right? Like the man was a legend in many ways. Yes. But I remember like I don't know, just early adulthood or whatever, a friend was showing me Labyrinth for the first time. And I hadn't really, like, as weird as it is, I hadn't really seen much of David Bowie. You know, it's just, he was one of the people, like, you'd hear about or whatever. But, I mean, I'm sure I'd seen, like, the iconic Aladdin saying lightning bolt at some point without really, like, thinking about what it was. Or I don't know. But anyway, I see him as the Goblin King.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't know David Bowie was so hot. That was like the first thing that I said. But then weirdly, that should have motivated me to like, oh yeah, I want to check out a bunch of his music. But I was just kind of like, oh wow, okay. And then it was like when I got really into JoJo that I started actually like going through and being like, okay, I want to like really listen to his discography. And so because I mean, even like seeing the character Yoshikage Kira in part 4, I like at that point I just like I could tell like, okay, this character is based off David Bowie looks wise, even though I hadn't, still hadn't really gotten into David Bowie. But then I don't know, just through JoJo, I really started doing more of a deep dive on his music, and I was like, oh, this is great. And I forgot like what point it was that it turned into an obsession, but just kind of like listening to more and more of his music, and I joined like Facebook groups about David Bowie, so I was learning all these facts about him and different things. And I don't know, and I would say like when it was like maybe early 2015 that I started getting like super into David Bowie and being like, oh, like I think this is my favorite artist now, like all this kind of stuff. And then early 2016 was when he passed, and that was really, really hard. I mean, if it was that hard on me as someone who'd only gotten like super into his music maybe a year prior to that, I can't imagine the people who had been listening to him, since the 70s. That's
kind of like what happened with me and Prince. I love
same year too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, around that time, yeah. Oh my God, yeah. It's just like there are those celebrity, I guess, deaths that like you just remember every detail about where you were when you hear them, right? Like Michael Jackson, I was like 9, but I remember being in my grandparents' house and like just running around thinking I'm like Accelerate from Ben 10, trying to see like my trail, right? My whatever, because I'm just running, right? Like I'm trying to zoom. And I just see like on the news, like, Michael Jackson's dead. I didn't know who that was, but I'm like, why does that guy look like a girl? I asked my grandparents, and she's like, just go play, all right? And like Prince, that's another thing. Like I remember like being in my apartment, my parents' apartment, and just hearing the news, and then like my stepdad took me to go immediately buy a Purple Rain album, and we just sat there like listening like on repeat throughout the whole day. But like anyways, yeah, it's hard. And I was just a fan like not too long before that, and it's just like I just got to know you, dude. Like, what?
Yeah.
It's crazy. And
it didn't feel, I mean, I was at the gym and somebody had texted me. It was like 10:30 at night. Yeah. And someone texted me saying, did you hear David Bowie passed away? And I was like, what? No, like it's a hoax. There's celebrity, it's like you're in that denial. Like, right. People make up stuff all the time. It's not real. And, I looked on social media and I started seeing things blowing up, and then I went to his son's account and his son confirmed it, and that's like when it kind of started sinking in for me. God. And I was like, no, like there's no way. And it hit me really hard. Like it was just very dealt with a lot of depression, and I know some people thought that was weird because they're like, well, you didn't know him, like it's right. Just it's just somebody that you were a fan of, like millions of people. And it's like, right. But I feel like he kind of changed my life in a way. And I don't know. It's like you do kind of feel this connection to Definitely. These musicians that you listen to so much. And so, one of the nice things, like I don't like living in LA, I'm just here for my job because I have to be. But one of the nice things about living in LA is that whenever you need a community for people who like the same thing, it's very easy to find here. Growing up in a smaller town in general, and a place that was more isolated from the rest of the US, it's like, you have like the 10 people who like the same thing as you do, and you all kind of have to learn to get along, because it's like, well, this is going to be the only group of people here who like this or whatever. But, you know, in LA, it's like, of course, there was a vibrant David Bowie community. And so we would go to his star. And I did this for years after. The last few years I haven't been because of scheduling conflicts. But, you know, for like at least probably 5-6 years, we would go to his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and people would play his music, sometimes on a guitar, or if somebody didn't have one, then someone would just bring like a stereo and play it, and people would light candles and put glitter down and pictures of him. Aww. And we would all just like kind of like collectively talk about how much we love and miss David Bowie. And I don't know, it's just like a really nice gathering of community. And it kind of, as silly as it sounds, it did almost feel like he was with us in a way, especially during those first few years. Yeah,
not silly at all. It's incredible the power performers and entertainers have on people, right? Like not only musicians, but actors, voice actors, right? Like I am super fortunate enough to have gotten to have some of my childhood favorite people on this show before, right? Like I'm a big Transformers guy, and I got the voice of Optimus Prime and Megatron, not from the original cartoon, but from Beast Wars and the Cybertron trilogy, Gary Chalk and David Kaye. Like,
wow, that's so cool.
I know. And this was like very early on when we first started doing interviews, and I'm like, I can't believe this. So like, you know, I had such a hard time keeping my inner child contained. You know, like usually when I have like props related to like the guests, you know, I'll have them like behind me and on the on the thing right there. And you know, I brought my Optimus Prime from Transformers Cybertron, my Megatron and stuff like, and I like took a moment. They're so nice, they're so awesome. And I took a moment to like share like how much they meant to me and still do. And like I was holding the toy and I'm like, just thank you. And they're like, yeah, man, like like it's also crazy because like on the other end, it's just like, it's a job for you guys. You know, like this is a thing you're doing to make money, to put a roof over your head and eat, right? But to us and to like other people, and like since not only you are a voice actor, but you're a fan of the things you're in too, which is a double positive for you, you know, like just having this impact that you're not trying to do, but it just happens, and it's like crazy and it's beautiful. It's just like it helps bring so many people together, and it's just like a big old collective thing, and it's amazing.
Aw, well, I mean, something that, you know, I try to always keep in mind is sort of a reality check is that, right. You know, and I'm always very you know, I go to so many conventions, and I'm always very grateful when people say that, you know, like, oh, like this performance or this character you did, you know, it changed my life. But yeah. I'm only like a small part of that because, you know, I'll use like the game Nier Automata as an example of something that a lot of people say, because, you know, it's a very emotional game.
I'm playing through it for the first time because I've been trying to prepare for you, and I at least got through the first ending, and now I'm on the second run through.
Yeah, when you get later in the game, you're gonna cry a lot. So
I'm sure.
Be prepared.
I know.
But, you know, it's like a lot of people have said very, very kind things about that game. And I was like, well, it's Yoko Taro's storytelling and his characters. That's ultimately what it comes down to. It's like you know, my job was to portray that character in English, you know, that because that's the other thing is 90% of the things I work on, because I do so much localized media, I'm not even the first voice. So, you know, if you want to get down to it, it's like the voice of 2B is really Yui Ishikawa. And a lot of what I was doing was, you know, hearing what she did and trying to translate her intent, her performance into English with my performance, if that makes sense, with guidance from the team. So I feel like my contribution to the whole of something like that, like it's small in retrospect, because it's like, well, you know, like I'm really grateful, obviously, that people like my performance, but it's like I feel like what they resonate ultimately with is this character and the storytelling that, again, was created by Yoko Taro, not me. So it's kind of, you know, I think that's one of the things that can really sort of be a grounding point, is just sort of like, yeah, we're part of a whole, you know, we help bring like a vision to life of many people who have been working on this before, like way before we even get into the booth.
Yes, I agree 100%. Colleen O'Shaughnessy, who was on the show not too long ago, the voice of Tails, she said like something very similar, where it's like, it's not just her, it's like, you know, a collective of people. It's the writers, it's the directors, and, you know, it's all these moving parts that come together to bring just this one character to life. and you have a more, I think as a voice actor, you might have a more direct connection to the audience because that's who we're hearing, and I think that's also a big part of it. But yeah, beautifully said. It's more than just one person making this thing happen, and it's such a great, again, it's crazy how like these things like come to be. We're talking about cartoons and movies and video games, like it takes all these many people to like make this one thing, and it changes people's lives, and it's beautiful. But we'll dive more into that in a bit. But before we get there, this next question requires a bit of context, so please bear with me. Mm-hmm. I am a producer, audio engineer at WGCU, a public media radio station in Southwest Florida, and NPR PBS, right? And we have this other show called 3 Song Stories where we tell people's biography through music. The guest comes in and they choose 3 songs that every time they listen to these songs, they immediately get transported back to a time and place where they have a significant story associated with it. It could be a funny story, it could be a nice little anecdote, or like super serious, super emotional, whatever, right? Something that just takes them back there. I want to ask you, off the top of your head, do you have one song story you're willing to share?
Oh, this is hard because my first thought is, being like, well, this song is my favorite song, or whatever. That's kind of like my first go-to. Because my favorite song, just to get it out of the way, is called Star by David Bowie. And it is from, what I'd argue is his most popular album, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Yeah. But I feel like that particular song is very underrated. So it's like, unless I'm talking to another David Bowie fan, usually when I mention the song, they don't, they can't think of what it is or whatever. So I do highly recommend to look that up. I guess, I don't know if it's anything specific, because it was more just like I would listen to that whole album and love that song. But, I guess that song does kind of remind me of going to the Hollywood Walk of Fame and just being with those other David Bowie fans and just kind of, we call it more like a celebration of life, I guess you could say.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember, too, that the stars were really vibrant then, like right after he passed when we went there, and it kind of felt like he was with us, because so much of his imagery was about stars.
How does that song fit into your life today?
I don't know why I love that particular song so much. It's just sometimes you find songs that you really connect with, and it's just I think it's a well done musical piece. I don't know. And I've just always it's interesting because I've always kind of gravitated towards star imagery, even since I was a kid. I don't know why, I just do. And so then JoJo has a lot of that theme as well, and David Bowie. So I just thought that was a really cool coincidence, or kind of oh yeah, this is the path I meant to be on. So both of my tattoos are actually stars, one for JoJo and one honoring Bowie after he passed.
Oh. God, that's beautiful. What's that saying? Aim for the stars, you might land on the moon or something?
No, I think it's aim for the moon, and then if you miss, you'll still land in the stars.
Ah, okay.
Or in the stars, yeah.
That's it. So, but to bring it back to the connections and stuff that we were talking about, as someone who's brought so many strong and unique characters to life, do you feel a personal connection with any of them? Has any of them ever changed your perspective on how you look at things?
Oh, I mean, Jolyne from JoJo's is that's the role that I, hands down have the most personal connection to, because I wanted to play that character for 8 years. I mean, that was my dream, the character that I wanted to play more than anything in the universe. So that was kind of the one where I joke, I tried to just shape my whole destiny to be able to play this character someday, right? So, that one is by far, people ask me actually quite a bit at conventions. They're so do you have a favorite, out of all the hundreds of characters you've played, what's your favorite? I know it's probably so hard to do. It's no, it's Jolyne. No offense to anybody else. Of course, I love a lot of characters that I've been fortunate enough to play, but that's the one that I just wanted to play more than anything.
Yeah, it's like I mentioned earlier that you are a fan first of this IP, and you got fortunate enough to actually be a starring role in your favorite show. And if that's also already your favorite character, that's like, what more can you ask for?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think one thing that I like to kind of explain to people is that no one is going to get a role just because they want it,
Yes.
myself included. Because at the end of the day, production, like the people responsible for casting, all this kind of stuff, they can sympathize with, okay, this person really likes this show or this character or whatever,
Right.
but they have to do what, choose what the best choice is for the overall vision of the project. So, I mean, there's been plenty of roles, and I don't really give specifics because I don't want to, like inadvertently be like, oh, well, this actor who got, because
Of course.
in all the situations of a role that I wanted but didn't get, when I heard what they cast, I'm like, no, that actor was the right choice. Either my read wasn't strong enough at the time, or it just, they just happened to fit that role more, whatever. But in the case of Jolyne, I put in the work by really wanting to work hard at being a good actor so that when that moment came, I would, one, have the chance to audition. Even
Yes.
being able to get in the room in the first place is really difficult on a lot of projects. And also that I would be the best choice for that role. So, and that's the hard thing because there really isn't any way around just putting in the work for that. When I, first started, I was like, oh, I'd love to be in like this show or that show or whatever. But it's kind of like, well, but at the end of the day, that doesn't matter if you like that project or want to be in that project, because they're going to cast who feels like the best fit.
Yes. Yeah. And you still got to put in the work to do that.
100%.
Yeah. And with Jolyne, she has an explosive personality, right? But she does also have a mix of toughness and vulnerability and, of course, humor. How did you tap into her rebellious and badass energy? Does that help you relate to her? Does that help being able to ease into that role? Like, do you see that similarities with her?
I feel like Jolyne is kind of like me if I were way more cool and badass. Like, I wish I was like as cool as a Joestar, right? But yeah, I did definitely try to. I mean, I try to apply that philosophy to any character that I play, is
Right.
just bringing like a three-dimensional, well-rounded, because no character is just like a strong character. It's like they always, you have to kind of have those moments of vulnerability to balance it out. And I remember early on, like, because I usually don't look up comments about my work. I think it's just setting yourself up for a bad time. But,
Yes.
it was really hard not to with JoJo, just because it was like something so important to me, and I broke that rule, and of course it was a bad time. And and I remember somebody like criticize, it was like the scene that somebody had uploaded to YouTube or whatever, and someone was criticizing because they were like, oh, she doesn't sound like strong enough, she's supposed to be a Joestar, all this kind of stuff. But it was one of those moments, like that particular scene was one of the moments where she was more vulnerable, and I was trying to show that, so so that those other dimensions of her could come through. Because of course, like I had read the manga beforehand years prior, like I knew where the story was going. So it's, one of the things that I wanted to convey too, that I feel like we see in the manga, is that she becomes stronger as she grows into herself. At first she's kind of like, oh, like, what is this? Because her dad was ultimately trying to protect her from having the same, like, oh yeah, we have to just constantly have enemy stand users trying to kill you and you have to fight them, and then when she is kind of forced into that world, whether she wants to be or not, because she's sent to the prison, then she kind of, she has to step up and she has to be, and so I just wanted to show her journey becoming stronger and finding like her reasons to fight and realizing the people around her that she cares about, and just seeing how her relationship with Jotaro evolves, and how at first she's like, I want nothing to do with him, he wasn't there for me, all that kind of stuff, and then eventually kind of having to team up in a way. So I don't know, there was just like a lot of like kind of long game galaxy brain stuff that went into what I wanted to do with that performance. And so it was like really frustrating seeing people take like one scene out of context and just criticize it based on that and not as a whole.
Yeah, of course. And I'm sure that's not easy for anyone to deal with, because a lot of people don't know the amount of work you put into trying to bring these characters to life. Not only you, but of course, like the rest of the team, like for the writers, for the animators, whatever, right? Like you're going through a lot of mental backflips to like get into that space and like bring this thing to life. Especially, you are taking extra care of it because of how much love you have for this series, but also for the character.
Right. I'd even like looked at some of Matt Mercer, because I had usually, watched JoJo in Japanese, to be honest, but I made a point to watch some of Matt Mercer's performance as Jotaro, because I was like, I want to be able to sound like his daughter, you know?
Right.
So it's just like, I think people, because I never do this for like any other role, right? Like a lot of times we just kind of go in, we don't know what we're doing until we, our first session or whatever. But just for this in specific, I was just so particular about what I wanted to do with it.
Of course. Yeah, I totally get that. And to talk a little bit more about another very notable role of yours, to be again, we already mentioned a little bit about like the writing and like how Yoko Taro, the creator of Nier Automata, is known for his abstract and deep storytelling, right? Was there a moment in the script while recording, or if you took the time to play through the game yourself, where you thought like, wow, this game, all of this is going to stick with me forever?
I feel like, well, because it's interesting, because of course I knew like certain spoilers and different things recording it, but it's so different, because the process of recording, a lot of times you may be recording certain things out of order when you're doing a game, because, for example, you usually, like if you do cutscenes that have to be dubbed to picture because they're done in Japanese, like this game was, sometimes you'll do those separately because that you have to do precise sync, so it's easier to just kind of do all those movies like at once, and then you might do like like your story dialogue, and then you'll usually do the battle separately. Like in any game, usually, like in game, like open world stuff and battle, like that's done separately. So a lot of the way that you're kind of seeing things a lot of times you're not seeing visuals when you're recording a game. We often only see visuals if we have to sync to picture for something. So kind of the way that the audience is going to experience the story and see like, the visuals, the music, hear the different characters interacting with each other, because obviously we record one at a time. So it's, there's a lot of things that kind of come together than when you're playing it, or if you're watching somebody else play it or whatever, that you don't necessarily know how it's going to play out when you record. So I think when I was playing the game, the moment that was kind of like, was when I started feeling bad for the little machines.
Aww.
And because, when you first start playing the game, you're just going through and like beating everything up.
Yeah.
And then you're like, wait a minute, these guys are just chilling. Like, why am I attacking them? They're just trying to have a good time.
Yeah. I came to the carnival area, right? That's the point where I'm like, when I first got there, I was, destroying a couple of them, and I'm like, wait a minute, they're not fighting back. Are they like good? Are we like friendly? And then they, their voice lines and how they're acting around with each other, I'm like,
yeah.
Now I feel bad for doing. Yeah, I totally get that.
I heard with original Nier, they definitely like I haven't played the original Nier, but I heard about that twist and how people start feeling really bad.
Yeah. Is there a quality or skill you've seen in someone else, maybe one of your peers or an entertainer that you like, or even from your own characters that you admire and wish to develop in yourself?
Yeah, I'm super, super impressed by a lot of theater actors, especially musical theater actors, and that's a skill that I wish I had in general. I mean, just the amount of multitasking they have to do and stamina, and it's like, because voice acting is kind of like I'm just portraying like that one part of a character, but when people not only have to act, but they have to sing and dance, and they're wearing costumes and all that, because I also really like costuming and makeup kind of stuff. So it's just, I don't know, it's really cool to me. Like I wish that I was skilled the way that those actors are.
It takes a lot to do so much, that like all these amazing people that I've met who are in your line of work, that a lot of them either come from whom I've talked to, come from a musical theater background of some kind, or a radio background. And all of them are cool and different in their own unique ways, but there's a lot of similarities and overlaps, and like there's so many moving parts, and like developing your skills to then become the best kind of, you know, performer you can be, and it's incredible.
Yeah. Goals, you know, at least to learn it.
Yeah, exactly. The Voice Acting Club was a pioneering effort in the early days of online voice acting. What inspired you to create that community, and what was your vision for it at the time, and how has it evolved?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So I was super involved, like when I was just starting as a hobbyist, I was super involved in the Flash animation community.
Yes.
And just, you know, doing voices for people's animation projects and you know, like web-based little games that they could do. And one important distinction that I like to note, because, you know, now it's possible for people to do this as a career, like indie stuff and online work, because a lot of content creation is monetized, but it was not back then. This was before like YouTube days and stuff like that. So pretty much all of these early animations and like Flash games and stuff were all just volunteer based, like collaborative, because it was sort of, you know, it was just a different model than it is now, where, you know, you could have like ad revenue and all this kind of stuff. And it just, things weren't set up as much as they were now to like support creators in that way. So everything was just kind of like hobbyist work in a sense. And it was sort of, you know, how I found work in that type of project back then was I would just like go to, you know, different animators that I found who were on like the front page of Newgrounds that day or whatever. And I would just like message or email them and say like, hey, like, if you need a voice actor, like here's some samples of my work or whatever. And sometimes they get back, sometimes they wouldn't. But a lot of times, especially if people had a lot of different characters to cast and stuff like that, there wasn't really a central way for them to find people. And the same for a lot of the actors who wanted to do this and other hobbyist actors and stuff. They were kind of like, well, you know, and we did have a couple message boards that were big at the time. The Voice Acting Alliance was one that I was on a lot in the mid 2000s when I was first starting to do this. But I kind of wanted something that was aimed at, you know, like Flash animators and indie creators and stuff to be able to kind of maybe post auditions for their project, and for actors to kind of like have a section where they could post their demos and say like, you know, here's what I do if you're just looking for people and you don't want to hold auditions or whatever. So it was pretty, like, I don't know, it was just kind of born based off of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the site ran, I would say we started in like 2005, and it ran till about like 2010. And then around then it was like there were other communities that were really current and well maintained for that type of stuff, because with the VAC it was kind of hard, because eventually just all of us who were kind of moderating it or whatever, we all had other things going on in our lives, and we just weren't like really dedicated to it anymore, especially when there were other communities focused on the same thing that were current. And, you know, social media was becoming a big thing, so there were like Facebook groups, and it kind of just felt like redundant at that point, so it just sort of like died out. And then around, I think it was like end of 2016, I kind of, you know, especially seeing all this stuff again on like social media and people kind of like just wondering how to get into this stuff, and, you know, just needing that central place to be able to connect, and people asking me like, well, how did you do all this online stuff? And I was like, well, on sites that don't really exist anymore, you know? So it was kind of, and I think around that time was when maybe the Voice Acting Alliance had officially gone down or whatever. So it wasn't even like, oh, well, here's like a similar community that was there before us, just go to that or whatever. That wasn't even an option. So I think it was kind of like, we're like, hey, what if we, you know, I talked to some of the old people who used to mod it back in the day, and was like, what if we tried to like revive this community and like just make it a brand new thing? And they were all pretty much on board. And it was slow going at first. And then part of the challenge was that within a couple of years of creating that community, and, you know, it was doing pretty well, but message boards were already being phased out. Like, people didn't, you know, they use social media for everything. They wanted things in real time. So Discord was starting to become a big thing at the time. That's when, I think like 2018, when Discord really started blowing up as like, hey, there's this new thing. It's like, you know, kind of aimed at like, I guess, like the younger generation, people who game and all this kind of stuff. And so we made a Discord server at the request of different people in the community, and that's what really ended up taking off, just because we were one of the early, I mean, not the first, but we were definitely one of the earlier voice acting focused Discord servers, and I think that helped a lot, was just that we were kind of willing to evolve, like, okay, well, the community doesn't really want to post on like a big public message board anymore. They want to ask questions in real time, this and that. So our server really grew. I think we're at like 30,000 members now. Obviously, they're not all active, but we still, and to go back to the last part of your question and how has it evolved, but stayed the same in some ways, is that we're still kind of, obviously Flash animation is not so much of a thing anymore, but we're still very focused on the idea of connecting like indie creators with voice talent. Our community came up with the Indie Rate Guide, which is supposed to help both sides on coming up with like fair payment structures if it is a project they're making money off of. And we also try to just have resources for both voice actors and creators on how to work with voice talent, just ways for voice talent to be able to kind of protect themselves in terms of contracts and like, things that they may be asked to do that we're like, no, that's not fair. That shouldn't be standard. Don't agree to that sort of thing. Just as like an example, I know, won't go in too long with this, but when I was doing hobby work way back in the day, it was really common that it was just kind of an expected thing where people would have to export every line as its own file and like label it and, send a big zip folder of everything. Right. And then it was kind of like, especially as you start working in the industry more, you're like, that's not like our job. It's like, obviously if you're recording from home, you're going to like edit your file just to make sure that there's no like extra noise, that, that it sounds clean, whatever. Like that's fine. Yeah. But in terms of like cutting up all those files and export, it's like, no, like if we recorded a studio, like obviously that's not our job, so we kind of help set the expectation in the community that like, hey, this is a lot of extra work. As a project creator, this is something either you should be prepared to do, or ideally hire somebody, like hire an audio editor whose job is to be able to do this and kind of, edit everyone's files and make them sound uniform in the project. Or, failing that, pay the actors extra to do it, like if you don't want to do it, because if it takes 3 times the amount of work on average to do all that editing as it is to record the project,
Yes, there's a good rule of thumb we have here in working in a public media radio station. Whenever somebody's asking like, how long do you think it'll take to edit this package or whatever, or edit this story? Well, it'll take time and a half, usually. Like whatever time it is, like the raw thing is, plus half of that time to get it all edited and figured out, because you gotta go through it all. You gotta re-listen to everything, like it's time consuming, even though if it's like
it's one of the
things.
Reasons I don't do audiobooks. I mean, I like the idea of doing audiobooks, but I don't have the patience to like record for hours and edit for hours. And, my brain is too all over the place.
Yeah, I completely understand that. We, at the station, we also hosts a voice acting class, like we in collaboration with the university that we're on the same campus of, FGCU. And I also help teach that class. So after doing all this research on you and like learning about the voice acting club, I think this might be something that I'll show the students and like direct them towards in case they want like more information, because
that would be great.
That's like a great
spent
resource.
So many hours just writing articles that are completely freely accepted, because that was the other thing too with all the guides and articles I write, is that there's a lot of people who can pay for classes that teach you like the basics of, just the bare basics of this kind of stuff. And classes are good. I definitely recommend classes. But I think when people are new, it's better if they invest their money in classes that teach them acting fundamentals.
Yes.
Not, here's kind of, this and that about voice acting and, stuff that basically can and should be free, so part of my goal was making the kind of resources I wish I had when I was starting out and not having all that information behind a paywall.
Yes, I completely agree. So yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for doing that, because nobody asked you to, but it's clearly a helpful, huge resource that needs to be shared more. So thank you. Okay, well, now let's get into the speed round, where I'm going to ask you a bunch of silly, random questions, and we'll see how you do. You ready?
Okay. We'll try.
If you were the final boss in a video game, what would your title be?
Ooh, I don't know, supreme cow goddess of coffee or something.
Yes, I love that. What would your boss theme music be? And you can choose any song from anywhere.
Well, then I want to choose Star by David Bowie, of course. But interestingly, real quick, I do have a stand. I, of course, created my own stand for myself. It's called Insomniac, which is based off a Green Day album because my stand is coffee-based. And then my VTuber's stand is called Power of Love, and it's what allows her to time travel.
Oh my God! So just combine those things?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that. Have you ever tried Insomniac cookies, by the way? Just because that reminded me of it and I'm hungry.
I think once, yeah.
It's great. It's overpriced, but like their cookies are good. Not saying it's worth it, but they're good.
I just like anything that's open late night because I'm a nocturnal person.
So this next thing, I guess you already answered it. If you were a superhero, what would your name be and what powers? Did I just ask that? Am I having a brain fart moment right now?
You asked like final boss powers.
Oh, okay.
But of course, you know, I want to have, especially like considering my car and everything. I'm like, I gotta have time travel powers.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. I have a question about that. You have your own DeLorean, which is also my dream car. Not because of mileage or anything like that or space. No, it's cool and I love Back to the Future.
Yeah, you have to get it because it's cool because it's not a reliable car. I will tell you that.
So can I assume that's it's like time machine tricked out or not yet?
I have a lot of the props in the back. Of course, I have a flux capacitor because everyone's like, where's the flux capacitor? You know, I have a hoverboard. I have like a speedometer like in the movie. I have the sports almanac, a few different things like that. But I didn't do the full outside time machine conversions because one, it's really expensive.
Yeah.
And, you know, just maintaining the car and the constant repairs is expensive. Yeah. Also, it does make visibility more difficult, especially if you kind of like lose access to your rear view window and just have to put a camera in there. And finally, you have to drill into the stainless steel. And those original parts, like those stainless steel panels, are very rare at this point. Like one of them, like I think it's the front left fender. It's like there's memes about that in DeLorean owners groups because it's so hard to find those and they're so expensive if they ever do come, you know, somebody like has a car that just can't be saved and they get the part from it and they go for so much money. So it's kind of like keeping those pristine, like there is value in that.
Right, of course. Whenever you're driving with like friends or family or whatever, do you how often do you just quote the movie? How often do you just do those lines?
Well, I would say because the car can only fit two people, but if someone wants to ride in it, you know, around the block or whatever, I have a special playlist of just songs from the movie. So like it has the theme song. So when my best friend came to town to visit, we went to the real Twin Pines Mall filming location. Wow. And I just played like the da da na 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 na, you know, and then it went into like Power of Love and Back in Time and all those songs.
Oh, I love that. Fun thing, and I know we're almost out of time, but I'll make it quick.
Not out of time.
This week as of recording, the episode that released was Neil Ross, a long-time voice actor who's the voice of Keith and Pidge in the original Voltron. He's the Green Goblin in Spider-Man the Animated Series, Shipwreck in G.I. Joe, Springer in Transformers, etc., etc. He's also the voice of in Back to the Future 2 when Marty goes into the Biff future and he's in Biff's tower and he sees that TV, right? And it's like explaining the whole history of Biff and how he like took over the town or whatever.
Yeah.
That voice was Neil Ross.
What?
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Right?
Well, if you talk to him again, please tell him that one of your other guests has a DeLorean.
I for sure will. I'm going to actually email him the link to the episode, so then I'll include that. Hell yeah.
I have pictures of my car on my Instagram for anyone who's curious.
Awesome. What would your 14-year-old self think of who you are today?
I mean, I hope that I think it would be cool. Obviously, when I was that age, my big thing was like, oh yeah, I'm going to be in a rock band and, you know, like doing Warped Tour or something, right? But I would like to think that, okay, maybe this wasn't what I originally envisioned for the future. Again, no pun intended, but I think it's better. I think that ultimately I'm more happy doing this and that it's more fitting for my lifestyle. You know, again, like I have 5 cats. If I were on the road all the time, like doing concerts or whatever, that would be hard. Or, I probably wouldn't have 5 cats if my life had turned out that way. Or, and I still do. I still go all around and do conventions, but, thankfully I'm able to be back home enough that it's not a problem.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. We made it to the end. It is now time for you to recommend 3 people that you'll share this episode with whenever it comes out that you think they'll be a good guest on the show. If you can kind of help me get them on the show if you can.
I honestly don't know because, to be honest, a lot of the actors that I know are they're kind of like I am, where they just either don't do interviews or they're very selective. I'm extremely selective, but because you were very organized in how you presented everything, and because the concept for your show felt a little bit different, because there's a lot of people who, it'll just be kind of like, what was it like working on this project? What was it like working on this project? How'd you get into voice acting?
Business only, yeah.
Yeah, and I get, that's no shade to them whatsoever, but it's kind of like, I have a lot of that stuff answered on in my website or in panels or in other interviews that I've done many interviews over the years.
And I've listened it's kind of to many this past week. I'm just saying.
Yeah. And I just know that a lot of actors are kind of in the same boat where maybe it's hard for them to, but of course, if anyone asks me oh, did you like this show? Did you have a good experience? Of course, I'll tell them I did.
Aw, I'll take what I can get. That really means a lot to me. It means more to me than and I really, really do appreciate it. Yeah, and I try to do my best, respect your time and, and make this show as fun for you as it is fun for me, because I get to talk to amazing people like you.
Aww, very appreciated.
No, yeah. And one of the big concepts of the show is when I'm not interviewing guests, it's me and my best friends talking about our favorite things of pop culture, video games, music, whatever. And I really try my best to extend that with my guests, with you, to also have that kind of friendship level conversation, learning about stuff, and talking about your favorite things, not just your voice acting career and other stuff. We talked about it a bit.
So when I saw you want to talk about music and stuff, I'm like, cool, I can totally get down with that.
and I feel like we had a really awesome conversation. I loved every single minute of this. And just thank you so much for taking the time and being on the show.
Yes, of course.
All right, that's all the time we have for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode here on the Razzle Dazzle Show. If you want to hear more from Kira, be sure to check out her website, kirabuckland.com, and follow her on her socials and Twitch. This episode's somewhere on the internet. Follow us on our socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be sure to rate us 5 stars and leave a comment down below. We'll catch you on the next one. Next time on the Razzle Dazzle Show.
Trunks went back in time to stop the androids from killing everybody, and when he did, instead, and he went back to his own timeline, instead of his future being different, his future remained exactly the same. All he did was create an alternate universe where, and that's the same thing that the Avengers did. Why can't we just go back and kill Thanos? Well, because all you did is create a Divergent.
Technically, Back to the Future does both, right? They do their own thing, but they also do that because in Back to the Future 2, when old Biff from the future went back to 1955, gave his young self the almanac, how the hell did he get back to his future?
Hey, I don't think he did.
He did. We see him. No, that's how they get the DeLorean back.
He did. Yeah, you're right. He did. He brought the DeLorean back, and then that Biff. What?
It's the same Biff. It's a plot hole for 85 Marty and Doc to get the DeLorean back. That's the plot hole.
Would there have been 2 Biffs in 2015 then?
No. Tune in next week.